Hey, welcome back to another interview segment with Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn, and today we are traveling all the way out to West Texas to the thriving metropolis of Fort Stockton to meet my friend, my sister, my fellow advisor with Root Source, Revis Daggett. Revis, thank you for joining the program.
You're welcome. It's exciting to get to be a part of it, especially just knowing our connection through Root Source and all the amazing people that are advocating and doing what they're doing because of Root Source and because of otherwise. So it's an honor for me. Thank you.
Yeah, now we're going to talk a little bit about Root Source, but well, mostly I'm going to get to your roots. So let me start there. You are a Texas native. You just told me that you come from Fort Davis and you now live in Fort Stockton. So tell us a little bit about what makes Revis Revis.
Okay. Yes, I am a native of Fort Davis. It's a little old town. I love to, when I travel the world, say I grew up in a village, because it is. It's like 1,000 people up in the mountains, this beautiful area. And my parents were both school teachers, school administrators, and I'm the youngest of four girls. So I tend to be very gregarious, outgoing, because maybe independence in a small town, but my parents taught us a lot of strength and courage and confidence. We were raised in the Word. We were raised in the Southern Baptist Church, and we had such a beautiful group of ladies who worked so diligently to just impart scriptures, from vacation Bible school to Sunday school, all of those beautiful things. But I grew up in a community that was predominantly Hispanic, 80% Hispanic or Spanish speaking. So you could say Mexican, Mexican American, but many of them, knowing their roots, were tied to Spain. That didn't register a whole lot as a kid. It was just, oh, they're Mexican because Mexico's right next door. They speak Spanish, but because I was a minority there. Only 2 out of every 8 families was Protestant or Anglo. I thought, man, if I'm going to engage their parents, their grandparents, I need to learn to walk like them, talk like them, eat like them. So I was in my friends' homes every day. Every day I was learning to cook enchiladas or chile rellenos. Y también yo quería hablar español, so I wanted to learn Spanish, and I learned to speak it fluently so I could connect. I feel like communication is such a beautiful part of the connection, and I'm very much relationally based. So I would say that's a huge part of who Revis is.
Well, that's really cool. That's one of the things I love about Texas, especially West and South Texas, is it's a blending of cultures.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
usually it's a beautiful blend, some tensions,
Yes.
but yeah.
Yeah, and even to the point that a part of what my mission in the last few years has been is building a strong bridge between the state of Chihuahua and the state of Texas, because so many Texans, or let's say Americans, have an impression that the minute you cross the border, that's it. You're going to be kidnapped, or you're going to be robbed, or something's going to happen. And I'm like, no. It's so different. My vehicle is registered in Mexico. I drive to the border at Presidio and Ojinaga all the time. I go into Chihuahua City. I go to Guatemoc, and I go down to Barrancas del Cobre, which we call Copper Canyon, Basesiache, Patopilas, and I travel on my own. I go and I just build bridges, and I make connections with people to find out, what are they really like? Who is down there? What's their mindset? And I'm telling you, there are amazing folks just waiting to encounter folks like you and me. And if they had the ability or the courage, maybe they would be driving up this way. So I'm just trying to be an ambassador to build bridges in a cross-cultural situation, because we have this all over the world now. Why have those barriers?
Yeah. Well, that's true. It's good to have these relations and be able to cross borders in the proper way.
This is correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unequivocally. Yes. Yes.
And let me ask you this. Have you been involved in the intercessory efforts of Texans and Mexicans to address the wounds of the past and bring healing and reconciliation?
So from the intercessory part, not in the definition of the praying and gathering in prayer and walking and declaring per se. However, I have done some things that I felt was required of me. I have fasted. I have driven roads just by myself. So my husband laughs when people say, "Are you crazy? You let your wife go down there?" And he's like, "You haven't met my wife if you think you're going to tell her no." But he's very supportive. He's precious. And he grew up here. He knows I can navigate. And I'm very resourceful. But above all, our Father is resourceful. And when I know that I've been commanded by him to go, I go and I'm obedient and he makes a way. And a part of the adventure is seeing how he's going to make a way or what way it is he wants to make. So that's the sense that I've been doing. I've been connected with the mayor of the city of Chihuahua, the governor of the state of Chihuahua, some of the tourism committees, medical tourism, because of having battled cancer, with 1% odds to survive. And here I am 5 years later, 6 years later, actually, by the grace of God. And so I've connected in a lot of ways in how he's told me to do it.
So it's interesting you say you're not afraid to travel through Mexico because you know what it's like there. And when
Yes.
people say, "Oh, you're going to get robbed, you're going to get kidnapped," well, we hear the same kind of thing when we tell people that we go to Israel, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I went to Israel with my son in 2014. I was serving as an ambassador or a representative for Dr. Del Sanchez, who has an organization called the Anusim Center of the Americas. And so I went on his behalf. He was going through some health challenges, and I went to Ben Gurion University for a symposium that was being held there. And I didn't want to travel on my own, so I convinced my son to go. And again, people were like, "You're letting your wife go to Israel?" And my husband says again, "Oh, you don't know this gal. She'll be fine." So, and he let his son go. So there my son and I were, and we were driving around, and I kid you not, I got off onto a wrong road in an area where I was not supposed to be. And by the grace of God, he gave me the exact strategy of how to get out of there. And it felt a little hairy at times just because I really was out of my element. In Spanish, in Mexico, I can speak Spanish. I can connect and I can tell by maybe their vocabulary, etc., their intent or their background, because I am a linguist, but I'm out of my element when it comes to, say, Arabic or Hebrew in conversational terms, etc. But I still feel very confident being in certain areas. But when I got off into an area I shouldn't have been, it was a little awkward and hairy, but it doesn't stop me from going back. I still go back. And that was more my own feeling. No one threatened me. No one did anything. But I know the possibilities are there. But they're there in Mexico. They're there in Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, Chicago. Quite frankly, they're there in my own hometown of 1,000 people. It just depends if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time, perhaps, is how people sometimes say it. So I say my prayers. I lift my head. I put my shoulders back. And I go and march because I am a part of an army and I want to see life and truth and laughter be spread. I want to build bridges, and it is possible if people are willing to listen and lay down arms. I have heard if how does the expression go? It's more or less that if you ask Israel to lay down her arms, there will be no Israel. But if you ask her enemies to lay down their arms, it's impossible to do so. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm super awkward in that expression, but you get the idea.
Yeah, well, I believe it goes, and it might be from Prime Minister Golda Meir. If the Arabs lay down their arms, then there would be peace tomorrow. If Israel lays down their arms, then tomorrow there'd be no Israel.
That's correct. It becomes annihilation. And that's the bottom line. Annihilation is possible anywhere, but there are certain hotbeds. There are certain hotbeds. And I've always been a fan of, let's say, underdogs in this instance, only because on the global, on the global scales, that's how it looks. But when we read the scriptures, we're like, yeah, these aren't underdogs, but I'm willing to stand with them because I believe in the truth of the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we have similar outlooks here, because I'm beginning to understand just the preservation of the Jewish people, as the remnant, the visible remnant of God's nation of Israel. That is the greatest evidence that there's a God.
Yeah.
And we Christians talk about grace. Oh, absolutely. I'm saved by grace through faith in Jesus. Yes. But do you know, this is the revelation I'm getting, that just the return of the Jewish people to their inheritance in Israel, that's an act of grace.
It defies the odds.
It defies the odds, and it's because it's something God said he would do.
That's right. Yeah. What he says he will do, he does. He is true to his word. He's the same yesterday, today, forever. Any of these scriptures that we could quote, but in the natural, it looked impossible. And yet, here they are. Isn't that beautiful?
It is.
I love it.
Okay, Revis, you mentioned a word that I want to investigate some more.
Okay.
And I mean, you said Anusim, and that's the whole reason I want to talk to you, because a little bit of background, folks. Revis and I are blessed to be part of Gideon Ariel's advisory board at Root Source. So several weeks ago, we had a group chat, and it was about who is a Jew or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. And, I've been aware that there are different types of Jewish people, Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Yemenite Jews, Ethiopian Jews. There are others, in fact, coming from South Asia now. The rabbinate has recognized the B'nai Menashe who say they are descended from the tribe of Manasseh, and bringing them into the Jewish nation. Well, okay, Revis, who are the Anusim?
Yeah. Well, and do they even know that they are Anusim? So I became aware of this concept through my friend that I mentioned, Dr. Del Sanchez, reading some of his books. And at first, because my family, we had a bed and breakfast. So we hosted him and his wife in West Texas, didn't even know them. They knew some friends of ours. So we're hosting them, and we're trying to be good neighbors, like Texas Friendly would be, by helping and assisting individuals in their mission. And I begin to listen, and something about this mission picks at me, and I'm thinking, what do you mean the Inquisition? What was the Inquisition? And yet I was raised in the American church. I'm raised in American schools, and we've learned, and I knew the term. I know Ferdinand and Isabella. I know the period more or less because we memorized Columbus sailed the ocean blue of 1492. So there's some things that register, but I suspect there is, to a degree, the idea that, imagine Daniel being told, and now, boop, lock it up, swallow it, say nothing until it's time. And when it's time, it's time. Information comes out. This is just like family secrets, the ones maybe we don't want people to know. After generations, something gets eked out. Well, Father has a plan for how he's going to disseminate info. And I chuckle sometimes and I think, oh, no wonder you didn't tell us, because we probably would have tried to pull it all together and make it happen and create this tower and Babel all over again, or whatever the case is. It just wasn't time. But as we look at the scriptures, as we look at his 7 days of creation, we look at his timing, his biblical calendar, it's time. It's time. And so information is coming forth that's never been out there. So for the ones who argue against a creative thinker saying, what if? Could it be? I say, well, let's look. Didn't Daniel have to close up his secrets and not say anything? Aren't there? And there's many we could suggest we're in this situation or in this boat, that as the scrolls unroll, more information comes forth, right? So just to throw it in there, Al, all of a sudden, all of these things started coming to mind. I would have these thoughts about expressions that we use. And I would ask, why do we use that expression? So I would have some fun with you. Skin in the game. Skin in the game. What's your first thought about skin in the game? Why do you think we use that expression?
Yeah, it's because if you are invested somehow in a process or a thing, then you're going to work until it comes forth into fruition. It matures.
That's right. Are you ready for what I think pinpoints scripturally? And I think that the ones who have carried the word in their hearts, in their DNA, as we have gone into a scattering, be it the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, either kingdom, we have a connection to the scripture if we've endeavored to hold fast or come back to him, right? To make aliyah to his heart, if even not to his land yet. So you're gonna crack out in a big smile. I think it has to do with circumcision. Who else is required skin? It is a covenant. Unbelievable.
Well, you know what? To be honest, I have heard this before, but you're right. And it was in the same context, as we were establishing B'nai Yosef North America, the comment was made of, well, Abraham had skin in the game when that covenant of circumcision was made.
See, let me tell you this, Al. These were things that started downloading into my brain when I went through this very peculiar situation. I followed the biblical calendar for 1 year. I said, Father, if this is in your book, then I'm going to do this. So I followed the biblical calendar for one way, in the way that I knew, as best as I could. And I'm so grateful he looked upon my heart, because I can't imagine how awkward or, like what a goofball I probably was in so many ways. But I believe that because I was trying to honor and discover who he is in this and why it was written this way, who are my Jewish brothers, who is Judah, and the way that they do this, and inspiring me, making me jealous to figure out who they are and what is this perspective of God that they have. So I observed the calendar for a year, and at the end of the year, I kid you not, I had this most peculiar situation, as if maybe some of my Western thought process no longer had a hold of me, as if maybe some of the tinkering with the things that had been changed or tweaked a little bit no longer had hold of me, or at least I had another aspect of thinking. I was now considering two different aspects. So take, for instance, the nursery rhymes. There was a period of time, when the word was removed from the hands. During the Dark Ages, we're like struggling, plugging along, which is why I think we have these expressions, which is why I think nursery rhymes were created. Like Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Well, even if we pause there for a minute and we say, who scripturally had a great fall? Didn't Isaiah say, I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning? He did. And how do we depict Humpty Dumpty? As an egg. And don't we use the expression, he's a good egg, he's a bad egg? Why? Because it comes from the seed. The egg is what is needed for the seed. And what did they talk about Abraham? Abraham's seed. And there's going to be so many, you can't count them. And then in that same story, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, no nation is mentioned, no country is mentioned, no people group is mentioned. And yet, king is capitalized. This is not typical in English writing and editing. It would be a small king because you're just talking, in some ways about a generic idea of some bad egg or whatever. And even King's Men is capitalized. And I believe that it's the King of Kings. It's capitalized. And this Humpty Dumpty is the way of speaking of our great nemesis, and the accuser of our soul. And so I just had all of these things going through my mind over and over and again. Almost every nursery rhyme, every expression that we use. You could tell me an expression that I've never even heard of. Well, some of them are obvious, like writing on the wall. Remember when Nebuchadnezzar's son is being all full of himself and they're partying on all of the, using the implements from the temple and treating them with such loathsome disgust, or like, well, we're the greatest. And then what happens? This hand shows up and writes on the wall. Well, that one seemed the most obvious of all. And after I discovered that one, I started looking and I would read something and I'd go, oh, that's where that comes. That's where that comes. That's where that comes. And this is, Al, in some ways, oral tradition. And it has brought us through the wilderness and it has caused us to hold fast. So that's why sometimes I think, Father, who are we? Whether from the northern kingdom or the southern kingdom, why is it that this has been so deeply deposited in us? We haven't been able to let it go. And we're willing to put ourselves on the front line for Israel. So Anusim, I do consider myself an Anusim, but I cannot prove it. The only thing that I could tell you is once I encountered the biblical calendar and I have encountered authentically beautiful Orthodox Jewish friends, I don't want to do it any other way. I truly don't. So I'm like, why was it at a certain point my family chose to do it otherwise? But a part of this is where faith and love come in. A part of that is where you continue to journey and just endeavor to be the best version of you can be. A thoughtful, loving, kind version. But love also requires us to take up arms and protect at times. And some people don't understand that. I am very much a warrior in my heart, which is how I beat cancer. But it's also the reason that I would go and stand on the front lines with Israel, given the opportunity to do it. So
Amen.
Love can look various ways.
that it can. Well,
Yeah.
Revis, I got a question.
Okay.
You say, in your heart, you're Anusim. Here's what I understand of Anusim. They're
Okay.
like hidden Jews.
Yes.
You mentioned Columbus. I remember it was a revelation to me in my high school Spanish class where my teacher said 3 things happened in Spain in 1492. First of all, the Spanish finished the Reconquista, where they reconquered all of Spain and conquered the last Muslim kingdom in Granada in Spain. That's number 1. Number 2, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He set out from Spain and discovered America. And number 3, they kicked out all the Jews and the Muslims. That was part of the Inquisition. Okay, so since then, and I've referenced this in interviews and conversations with other folks, I read a really good book a few years ago by Simon Wiesenthal, the great Nazi hunter. And this was called Sails of Hope. And it was about Christopher Columbus and his voyage to the Americas. I
Mhm.
learned so much more about the Inquisition just reading Wiesenthal's book.
Yes,
Hmm.
I agree. Yeah.
And and also, I'm persuaded Columbus was Jewish.
Yes, I
Wiesenthal made a
absolutely am. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's the next thing. When Columbus sailed, oh, by the way, the decree by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to kick the Jews out of Spain,
Hmm.
that took effect the day after the Ninth of Av. It was
Yeah.
one of those many things in Jewish
Yeah.
history of
Yeah.
tragedies that have befallen
Yeah.
the Jewish people
Yeah.
since the destruction of the first temple, actually, since the
Right.
spies came back with the bad report to Moses.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Okay.
there were two who came back with a good report. 17%, mind you. And it was 17% of the leadership. So when you consider the entire population, whoa, like it's minuscule. Minuscule.
Oh, okay. Let's put a peg in that because I want to explore that a little later. So
Yeah, that's been a big part of my journey. And this year, the Lord has me using the menorah to look at what brings about righteous ruling. And this good report is such a significant part,
oh, it
you know.
is. It
Yeah,
is.
these
So,
two were righteous rulers, and that's what they were ushering in. So that's what 2024 has been about for me. So
oh,
very
cool.
interesting. Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I
this is good.
mean, Caleb of Judah and Joshua of Ephraim, just to put that in
Yes,
there. Okay.
I
So
know.
So Columbus, with his largely Jewish crew, set
Hmm.
sail from Spain in 1492. And a big reason they're doing that is to find out where are the kingdoms of the lost tribes of Israel so that Jews being expelled from Spain may have safe haven.
Yes. Well, and the
Hmm.
other part is, let's say that we backtrack using Schindler's name. Let's call let's call Columbus the Schindler of the Inquisition. Or we could fast forward and we'll call Schindler the Columbus of World War II. Okay.
Ah, yes.
So, Columbus, as I understand from some who have pressed and pressed and searched and researched, specifically Dr. Del Sanchez and his wife, Helen, among a few others, they are of the conclusion, the opinion, after looking at documentation, that Columbus literally strategized and did everything within his power to load these Jews that were being harmed and hurt and tortured, etc. Not really expelled. It was like, let's kill them before they get away from us. Although we use good, tidy language like they were expelled. So Columbus is getting them snuck onto his boats to get them into a place of safety, like Schindler did when he financed everything that he had in order to purchase any and every individual Jew in order to send them into freedom, to put them into a pipeline of freedom. This is how I see Columbus. And
Mhm.
so my understanding in the New World is that Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, Chihuahua, Coahuila became the safe haven, the place that they were tucked and hidden because it was so remote. And you
Mhm.
have mountains and villages were few and far between. So it wasn't easy to identify and then come and collect. Although the long arm of the Inquisition came to the New World and threatened and continued to annihilate, um, whatever terms you want to use, but they did everything they could to snuff out the Jews,
Mhm.
even in the New World, once they were out of Spain. So
Yes.
let's put a peg in this. Why
Yes.
is it that Paul was so desperate to get to Spain? Why did Paul feel he had to, he had to get to Spain? Let's circle back to that one. I
Uh,
can't let that one go. Isn't that peculiar?
well, it is. And, he says that in the letter to the Romans.
Yeah.
I think chapter 15, he says that I want to come see you, and
Yes.
then you can send me on to Spain.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so going back further in antiquity, now Spain was a major part of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
even before that, it was part of the Phoenician Empire. And by the way, Phoenician, Canaanite, Israelite, same culture, same
Yeah.
people.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I mean, when Jonah's going to Tarshish, he's going to Spain.
Right. Right. And he's like, I don't want to tell them. No, I know what these people will do. So he's kind of pouting, like, are you kidding me? I've got to go tell these heathens,
Mm.
Isn't that amazing though that Father would have a heart for for each and every one to still say, give them a chance.
Yeah.
I gave you a chance, Paul. Let's give them a chance. Let's see who will turn, who will put away their selfishness, their wickedness, their idle ways, whatever it is. And let's see who can build, who can become a better version of themselves, walking hand in hand with me so that there's more laughter, there's more love,
Yes.
there's more family building. And the kingdom is one of peace, that this is establishing partnerships. Yeah,
Yes. Oh,
yeah,
it is. And
yeah.
Spain is such a, I don't know. Right now, today, I'm looking at the news where Spain seeks to recognize and has recognized an independent Palestinian state.
Right. And
Oh boy.
the argument by the side of Israel and those who support Israel is like, really? Then why not let Catalonia become independent? They've been asking for a long time. And quite frankly, I believe in my heart that this is a massive concentration of hidden Jews or folks that are now practicing Jews. I haven't done further research, but my spirit will detect things and go, aha. And then there are two islands due south of Spain, right on the Moroccan land border. After the water, you have what is that? The Mediterranean
Oh
right
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two islands that literally kiss Morocco that Spain claims as their own. Why
Hey,
not let them go? Give them freedom. Let
yeah, that's
Morocco own them. Let them choose who they want to be. Talk about a double standard. And then, you know what's even more fascinating? So this whole structure of DNA within me that seems to not let go. I I watch movies about Israel. I watch movies about old time Israel, modern Israel. I watch these movies. It's all things from Holocaust to redemption to restoration. Ellie the Spy, the one that's called The Spy, right? This is a good one. Or the Red Sea diving resort. Oh my goodness. This one is about sneaking Jews out of Ethiopia into their aliyah. This is profound. It's so good. So my thought process comes down to the idea that if you actually even go to and watch these movies and see who was it that was helping Stalin and Hitler, it was Spain. And Spain was the one that was sneaking these bad guys out the back door, especially when the war was over and the good guys were trying to capture them and bring them to trial, to justice. But Spain helped them get away. And Spain created a pipeline to get the artwork out and the implements from the temple that so many of the Nazis had and hidden and kept, just like Nebuchadnezzar's son had
mm,
done. It repeats itself. And Spain has definitely been what an accomplice.
an accomplice. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that
scripturally we could call them otherwise, but let's, in legal terms, let's call them an accomplice, a
but
knowing accomplice. Yeah,
but in spite of that,
yeah.
God has his way because he says in the scriptures he does not lose track of where the seed of Israel's gone.
This is correct. And so the people themselves, most often under these governmental systems, are so genuine and so authentic and so fun and so meaningful. But it's the corruption and the perversion in the hearts of those that, I don't know, I guess climb to higher and lofty places in leadership and then somehow get bitten by pride, by lust, by, I mean, even if lust for power, by whatever it is. And then there's a shift, and it's like they start strong arming and controlling. It's like what happened to the heart of a father that you had when you were just, the meter maid in your community, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I have great friendships with people in varieties of churches all over the world, or temples or synagogues, you know. And when I speak against something, it typically is more what is the beast system, this controlling system of the leadership, not the people whose hearts long to know Father and are being genuine versions of themselves and seeking Him. And that's how their mom and dad did it. That's how grandma and grandpa did it. That's how they know to do it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so this gets back to your story. Now, Anusim, they are hidden Jews. I mean,
Yeah.
and we can, going back to the Inquisition, what the
Hmm.
Spanish and the Portuguese and the Church of Rome in that era in the Middle Ages, they said you're either going to convert to Catholicism and
Yeah.
become converts, or
Yes.
you're going.
Well, they called them conversos. Then we'll talk about among our own people what we called each other. Marranos, pigs.
Moranos, yes. Yeah, Moranos. But those who retained their Jewishness continued to observe Torah,
Yeah.
hidden in their homes, by the way.
Yeah.
And then who let's see, they fled to Mexico, to South America, to Colorado, for example. They became hidden Jews.
Yeah.
And over the generations, people forgot.
This is correct. Well, part of it
Yeah.
was when you continually see an inquisitor's hand and you see the danger of death. So it's reared its head over and again. You don't have to look too far, but we haven't classified it as such. So, our students don't necessarily know to call it as such. But let's even talk recently, Hitler and
Mhm.
Stalin. This was
Yeah.
a of Jewishness, of biblical behavior. And so go before that, I'm not great at the names, but between the 1500s and the 1900s, there definitely were those who were like convert or die as well. I mean, the Inquisitor's hand was still there. So what happened, what seems so uniquely interesting, is that I remember as a child asking my friend, "So where are your grandparents from?" And she's like, "I don't know." I'm like, "What?" And well, I don't know. And I was like, "Well, why don't you know?" "I don't know. My grandmother never talks about it." And then someone else, I would say, "Well, you get older and you'd say, well, let's look at the birth certificates." They're like, "We don't have birth certificates." I'm like, "What? Why wouldn't you have birth certificates?" So then I start seeing this trend that doesn't occur to me until later in life, that even once they arrived here, they were very incognito, here being the New World. They didn't keep birth certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, or if they did, grandmother had them hidden very well behind a picture on the wall with the mezuzah that she kissed every day, but the Pope's picture was in front of it.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks she's a good Catholic kissing the Pope's picture. And then when she passes away and you pull the Pope's picture off, there's actually a mezuzah behind it, or things hidden under the floorboard of the house. I mean, very, very interesting things. And this is being discovered all over New Mexico and Colorado, Texas, Chihuahua, Coahuila. This is one of the reasons I feel so compelled to drive into Mexico, is just to go and then just sense and listen. Sometimes I go with no purpose other than to bear light, to drive a pathway, to try to open up an airway for people to discover who they are or begin to see things and hear things in a new way. So in the end, the other thing that I think of, I speak Spanish fluently. Al, this is very, very peculiar for a Protestant gringa. And I say gringa with all kind of fun. I talk Spanish. Almost all of my friends are Mexican or Hispanic. And they tease me all the time. And my nickname is Güerita, the white one, the little white one, because it's peculiar that no one in my family spoke Spanish. And I started in the 6th and 7th grade teaching myself out of a book, for Pete's sakes. Who that's like a super jock, very like energetic, intelligent, who's locking themselves in their upstairs bedroom and grabbing a book about Spanish and practicing voraciously. And then I will never forget, Al, I was like, reading the Old Testament. I had a voracious appetite for the Old Testament. And I'd be like, this makes me so mad. Why do they call this, Av? And why do they call this, help me with some of the month names that are biblical. Kiev, no. Kislev, no.
Well,
Yeah.
Kislev, let's see, Elul, Nisan, Iyar.
Nice.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I've not gotten really great where I've memorized them, but I'm like, Father, how come we haven't converted this for me to understand? Because now I'm like, which month is this, etc. Well, thank goodness he didn't listen to my rant and raves, because then years later I've come full circle back and said, oh, well, good. They didn't change those. So we're able to see. But what's very interesting to tie that together, the Spanish that I learned in my small community was considered sort of a corrupted or perverted kind of Spanish, not perverted in a sexual form, but perverted in a linguistic form, right? So when other people heard it that were like educated, they would say, ooh, what is that? I was like, well, that's Spanish. They're like, no, it's not. And I was like, well, it is in my hometown, and they understand it clearly. So do you know, Al, now that I'm in my 50s, and through Del Sanchez and through the voice of the Holy Spirit and searching and digging in historic records, I figured out that the Spanish that I speak fluently is Ladino. It's the very Hebraic form of Spanish. And so that is why I've decided, because of my total fascination with language and how something in our DNA doesn't leave us and we reconnect with it. I have dug and searched. This is why I'm doing the Hebrew at the graduate and doctoral levels, to dig further. And I'm finding so many things that we use in English that the believers among Ephraim, the believers among Judah have carried with them. Just like writing on the wall, you got skin in the game. I'll cut a deal, right? Didn't he cut the animals in half, and down the middle they walked for the covenant? Let's cut a deal. Why would you have to cut a deal? Why couldn't you just make a deal? Isn't it profound, the language we use? And so it was like, after having that experience in 2012, all of our idiomatic expressions, all of our nursery rhymes began to just play through my mind, and then words, and Father began to show me connections, etc. And that's why I'm like, I can't let it go. I cannot prove in my family line where there was a shift, but everyone in my family has blue eyes except for me. I have green, and my grandfather had green eyes, and his cheeks were very, very pale and rosy, like the Spaniards. But if they wouldn't accept that, I am also told, and I have discovered through history and digging and searching, that some of them, to throw the scent off of what Columbus was doing and others were doing, some fled to Ireland, that the little I is that next generation of the big I, Israel to Ireland. So you see lots of green eyes and red hair and,
Well, and this also goes back to antiquity.
Yes.
Because, let's see, Spain is Iberia, or
yes,
which is linguistically linked to Hebrew.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
All right, right. So there's this Celtic organization, this fraternal organization among the Irish called the Royal Order of Hibernians, because there is this link between Ireland and Spain.
Yes.
And it's a Celtic link, it's a Gallic link, it's a Hebrew link.
Yes. My grandfather's name was Irby. So if you reverse the B and the R, it's Ivry. Ivry. The B and the V are interchangeable depending on the dot or no dot. So
That's
his
right.
name was Ivry, Hebrew man.
The Hebrew, exactly.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? And at one point, my father said to me, and he said to no one else, but we have these moments, right? We have this recall, or the spirit will just have us utter something. My father said something to the effect, he lived until he was 90, and he said, well, my people were Black Dutch. And I was like, what? Wait, what? Excuse me? He had never said it. No one in the family had ever said it. And this, to me, bears witness to this idea. Don't ask, don't tell, because the Inquisition will find you. We are Texans. We are only Texans. That's all we are. Or we are Irish. We've been in Ireland all our life. That's it. That's all you know. Hush, don't say anything else. Because I found that when I asked some of the Mexican grandmothers, they would say, no hablas de eso. Don't speak like that, or don't speak of this.
Yes. And oh my, it must have been so horrible in the 15th century.
I agree.
Yeah, that it's still 500 years later. But we need to think about this for a minute. Okay, the Inquisition, all right? This is the Empire of Spain in partnership with the Catholic Church, seeking to root out everyone who is not Orthodox, with total loyalty to the Pope and the monarchs of Spain.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's to the point that they had watchers in the cities to look out on Friday nights to see where are their houses that don't have smoke coming from the chimneys, because they're Jews, because it's a Sabbath and they don't kindle a fire on the Sabbath.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's to the point that if you want to get a government position, you have to have a certificate that says your bloodline is pure, going back like 7 generations. And the Inquisition would actually catch people who, not knowing their history, they apply and find out in a records check of the genealogies that, oh, your great-grandfather was a converso. He was a Jew and he converted to Catholicism. So, no, your bloodline's not pure, and now we have to investigate you.
Right. So then, Al, is it possible that among those that had been pure and then became conversos in order to save their family, to remain physically in the earth? Now, however Father deals with that, that's up to him. Quite frankly, I don't judge them at all. I watched the movie Defiance and I was like, oh yeah, like whatever it takes, Bubs, you stay here and you defy the bad guys by surviving. Okay, that's why they called it Defiance.
Now, just a reference, that's the one about the Jews in what is now Belarus, who defied the Nazis.
They lived in the forest and they had to eat the horse to survive. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that was
what a profound story, right? So then what I was going to say, is it possible at a certain point that some of those bloodlines have been purged from what are the data banks of being considered Jewish? I don't know. I'm not being accusatory. I'm just asking, is it possible that things have been shifted, removed, held back, There's always yet revelations to come forth. What was, is, and will be, but we don't always see it for what it is. Sometimes it's redefined. We see this happen politically all the time in order to perpetuate a story in the way that the winner wants to, or the controllers want to. I do have a suspicion that whether or not our bloodlines would ever prove, I know that our hearts will. And I really believe that our mentality and our intent will, and that we will be accepted with great love, just like scripture says, because we're willing to build and be there and be a part. We just want to be with our family. We want to be the lost brother that goes home, and for them to say, come on home. And that's why I asked in the text, who says it's time to come home? Who gets the honor and the privilege of this? And are they the guardians that are endeavoring to do it with righteousness? Are they doing it politically? Is there a little bit of both? There has to be both until we have a total redemptive process, but we're the ones that try to bring about this. I don't want to bring that about through war. That's not the goal. I want to build with my brothers, but I want them to see us for who we are. And I honestly think if we removed a lot of the verbiage and we only watched each other's behavior, I think in some ways it would become so clear who is trying to build and love their grandchildren and leave a legacy of life and laughter and healing. And these are the ones we would want to connect with, that we lift our eyes and we say, thank you. There is no other like you, none. And that we're doing things so similarly, you know. This is my heart. This is my passion. And that's why I'm like, why the heck would I be so hungry to connect with Judah, with Israel, with to bring Ephraim and Judah together, and to consistently, I'm now at the point like where Jeremiah said, we're going to fish and then we're going to hunt. I am now like the hunter for the Sephardi. Do you know who you are? Do you know what your history is? Have you looked up your history and see then what the Holy Spirit does through it? And if there's a strong movement or passion to reconnect or something, so be it. If not, then it's not time. And it's the craziest way that the doors get open to do that. And it's become such a joke in my family that there's literally no physical evidence of why I should be doing this, but I'll come home late from being out somewhere, and my son, who was only like 18 at that time, he would roll his eyes, kind of laugh, and he'd say, you met a Sephardic Jew, didn't you, Mom? And you had to tell them who they are. And I would chuckle and I would say, Bubs, could you explain why in the heck that as the 20% of population, I am one of them, I'm one of those güeritas living among them? Why is it? And why is it that when I moved away, I only wanted to come back to this borderland region and be among my friends who speak a Ladino, who have such beautiful, precious hearts, whether they were raised in the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, the Baptist Church, you know, whatever it was, Methodist, Presbyterian, these are all very strong out in our areas. Each one of them that I've loved, and they've loved me so profoundly, has such a beautiful aspect of love and life and laughter, building, healing, reconciliation. I'm like, there's something different about the authenticity of these kinds of people. And they come in all colors. They come in all cultures. They love to listen to varieties of music. They eat varieties of foods. They decorate their houses different ways. They paint their houses different colors. And I lift my eyes and I say, thank you, Father, for variety, because it would be terribly boring if they all did it just like me, you know?
Amen.
What a
Yes.
boring world that would be. It would look very white, European, Southern Baptist until something changes, right? And it has. And I'll never go back to being the same Revis, but in some ways, I'm the same Revis. I just added some new perspectives and celebrated it. But I do ask questions. Who's in control of the gates? Who gets to say that I've reached a point of being trustworthy among these folk? And maybe it's not time to ask those questions. Maybe in time it'll come. But I did ask because I felt like our platform was a meaningful, safe place to ask that. And
Yes.
it's Jews and Christians wrestling through these concepts, trying to learn about each other, grow together, spread the good news of bridge building.
Bridge building. Yes.
Right?
And
We're bridge building. We're not trying to kill each other and beat each other up and accuse each other. We're trying to find the things that are more in common. Celebrating births of our children and our grandchildren, birthdays, anniversaries, but memorializing, remembering, grieving through tragic moments of our history and endeavoring to make changes so we're not the ones that repeat the
yes.
Holocaust,
Yes.
the genocide. And yet that's what we're being accused of doing among Palestinian people. And so it gets so frustrating. It gets so difficult to weed through all of the constant politics, the misunderstandings, but it's one person at a time, one family at a time. And if there are those whose ears don't want to hear it, then I don't waste my breath anymore. I just live the best version of me that I can live. And I try to draw people because I'm profoundly joyful and very generous and kind, because that is what I've learned from Father. And he owns everything. It's all his. And when it runs through my hands and I run out what I've learned, he'll give me more to share, because the intent is to build, to love, to heal. So there's always more there. And that draws them. So sometimes I just shut up and don't say anything, but that's rare. You could probably, I'm trying, Al.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, I agree with you on the on our WhatsApp group with the Root Source Advisory Board. It is a safe place.
Yes.
And it's such a
beautiful people.
Yes, so we're talking about Israelis, Orthodox Jews like Gidon and Devra, and then American Jews like Michael Stoltz, who's Gidon's U.S. representative. We have Armando from Panama. We have all those crazy Americans. We have folks from the Philippines. And I don't know where else, but we can share. We can ask the hard questions. And if we don't get an answer now, that's all right.
Yeah.
We're family.
Right. Well, and it is like coming together at Thanksgiving or coming together at a Passover meal. Or if we say Thanksgiving, let's do fall during Sukkot, and celebrating food and giving thanks and, asking tough questions, even at the family table. Hey, how come grandpa this? Or what about my brother that? Even within our families, we ask that. So within the context of our root source family, feeling confident to ask questions and still be loved. And then when we step out of line saying, look, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. I'm just wrestling with this. I'm going through a season. I can't let this go. And I got to figure out some answers. And so who better to go to than family? So I'm grateful for those other than the Daggetts, my last name, or the Wards, my maiden name. I'm super grateful for the Ariel family and the Odell family, right? So we have Bob Odell and Gidon Ariel, who together they cut a deal They
They
made a
did.
covenant. Isn't that beautiful? They put skin in the game. They saw the writing on the wall to do something about what is going on and what God's promises are. They're being proactive. It's going to be messy. It's going to
Yes.
be messy. We're going to step on each other's toes. But where is faith? Right? Where is
Yes.
love and forgiveness? Unless there was a downfall that we need to circle back and say, look, will you forgive me? Will you give me another chance? And it's been a beautiful process. I've learned much through Root Source. Oh my goodness. When there was nothing, they were my bread and butter for 2 solid years. That in and of itself is all a miraculous thing of how the email hit my inbox. And I mean, just crazy,
Hmm.
crazy. Yeah. And yet there was substance. So every day I just listened. I had an hour, let me think, hour and 30-minute drive one way every day for 2 years. And I would just put on my faves and I would listen to, the history teachers. And it's been a while, so I've forgotten their names. But I mean, just anything from Rabbi Glick to, one who would be to Gidon himself teaching Jewish prayers. Oh, a precious man who taught me Hebrew. He was teaching me the alphabet and different things, just amazing things. True bread and butter. I mean, for 2 solid years while I'm on the road, on the road, on the road. That's all I knew existed. And then you begin to discover others that are building bridges and doing things. And it's like, wow, this is cool. I love that it's no longer an anomaly. This is
Yes.
becoming this is becoming a more vast approach to what our scriptural family, right?
Yes.
So both sides are like, hey, let's reach across the aisle and start figuring out who the other is. So I love it. Like I have access to very, very meaningful rabbis and pastors, the hosts in Israel who receive the Christians as they come, the Christians in Texas who receive the Orthodox Jews as they come. I'm telling you, it's been so darn fun. I'm hardly at home because I'm on the road to go connect with the Orthodox Jewish community in the Dallas area, which is 8 hours away.
Wow.
Yeah, I go all the time. Yeah.
By, by the way, I don't know why this just came into my head, but my favorite salsa in the
Yes.
world is from the
Yeah.
L&J Cafe in El Paso,
Oh,
which is right
I
next to
love it.
You love it? Okay. I mean, real, but it's
We
right
know
next.
where it is. I was the head volleyball coach at the University of Texas at El Paso for 3 years. And we would go to the L&J Cafe and we'd go to H&H Car Wash, which sounds like a nothing place until you went and got your car washed and ate some of the most incredible Mexican food in the world.
Yes. But what is it next to? The Jewish cemetery in El Paso.
That's right. That's right. Isn't that crazy?
I
Oh, I
had
love it.
no idea that there was a Jewish community that extends back centuries to the beginning of El Paso.
Well,
Oh,
remember again that Coahuila and Chihuahua would have been 2 of the most prominent hiding places in the New World. And then you have Juarez and El Paso, sister cities, that connected Mexico to Texas. Well, at that point, it was it was Spain.
it was,
It was
yes.
basically New Spain. And then in 1821 became Mexico. Texas was a state of Coahuila, not
Yes.
of Chihuahua. It was called Coahuila y Texas. And
Yes.
then just 15 years later, Texas fought to become independent. And the more I've dug, I am convinced in my heart it was a rejection of the Inquisition that was yet present within the Mexican authorities. It was not a rejection of the Mexican culture. It was not a rejection of the Spanish language or their leadership. It was a rejection of the long arm of the Inquisition that said, no, no more. And that is why you had Mexicans fighting on the side of the gringos. So you had what I call caramelitos, the golden ones, the caramel colors, fighting with the güeritos, the white ones. You had farmers and ranchers, people of the land that what I've observed in my family, my husband's family, they rest the land. They observe jubilees. And they don't even know what they're called. They just know that there's 7-year cycles and then there's 7 sevens. And I'm like, why do you do this with your animals? And my husband will say, well, I don't know, Dad and my grandpa taught me to do it. And then I'll ask them, they're like, well, granddad and his granddad did that. It's what you do because that's what your family did. So sometimes they don't even pass down why, as far as, well, this is what God mandated in scripture. They'll say, because this heals the land. You'll get better crops and your animals will fare better. But that's truth. That's truth. So that's what they've done.
That's the same thing with my family and with the English monarchy, circumcision is handed down. Why is this? Gee, I don't know.
Yeah.
And even right. I have heard, I read it in Yair Davidi's, one of his books, I didn't know about my people, the Scots. Well, they were called the Scottish Jews. Why? They didn't eat pork.
My mother was Scot. Her father, the one that had the rosy cheeks and the green eyes, was Scot. And I'm convinced that a huge portion of the DNA that I'm feeling comes through him. But then my father was the one who told me that his dad, that his people were Black Dutch. So now I'm thinking, holy Scott. Where would that come from? See, there's another expression. What about holy smoke? What do you think holy smoke is?
Well, that would be the Shekinah glory of God coming down on the tabernacle.
Yes, it is. Isn't that incredible? It's clouds of glory. It's Shekinah glory. All of this stuff. I just chuckle. I'm like, see, we've carried these expressions and we've endeavored to be honorable people. We have not ever meant to offend our Jewish brothers or to offend God in our behavior, at all. And I'm going to tell you this. You can cut this out if you want. This is the same thing as the husband-wife thing I told you yesterday. I believe Judah represents the natural groom and Ephraim represents the natural bride, each basically calling themselves who they are, the lion and the bride. Mm-hmm. Interesting, right? So then let me tell you this. I personally believe that our Messiah came. But I think there are a lot of things that we were told that he did at Easter time and Christmas time and that tweaked the calendar. So there is the mindset among Christians that if you at all observe the calendar, you absolutely reject Jesus. I don't agree.
No.
I don't agree. I believe that we have been presented a partial gospel, but Father has allowed us in his mercy and grace on both sides. Mm-hmm. Remember, it was like, well, and this one prostituted herself, but this one prostituted herself. I don't mean any harm, but each one of us is very human, right?
Yes.
I do not believe that observing the biblical calendar is a rejection of Messiah at all. But I think it rejects what he wasn't, what Constantine told us that he was and he was not, what Constantine's mother said was and was not. That is my approach. I do not think it's one or the other. I think there's somewhere in between the marriage of Judah and Ephraim, just like, isn't this what happened between Messiah's parents Isn't this what their bloodline reflected?
Yeah. Well,
Joseph and Mary?
mm-hmm.
Yes. So this is where it gets so interesting. You see the pattern, like I said yesterday. You had God, and then you have heaven and earth. You have Adam, then you have Adam Eve. You have the kingdom, then you have Judah Ephraim. You have the male, female, or the groom, the bride, the groom, the bride. If we need the Western terminology, if we need the terminology of the church, because the church talks about the bride, the bride, the bride. He's coming back for the bride, for the bride. Okay. Well, it's my estimation until there's a marriage in the natural, in the earth, meaning emotionally, between
Okay.
between the two parts of the kingdom, to where we have what? A restored kingdom.
Yes.
He
Yes.
he won't be able to come back. Our behavior dictates his timing.
Ooh, you said that.
Our our well, was it Obadiah? Well, quite frankly, a lot of the prophets of the Old Testament, Obadiah specifically speaks of Sepharad.
Yes, he does.
Is it? And Obadiah, to me, is such a profound image of Elijah.
Mm.
But Obadiah was in the camp of Jezebel and Ahab. He was brought up within that camp, like Joseph being in the house of Pharaoh, right?
Right.
Whereas Elijah's from outside, and yet of the same spirit, the
That's it.
same end game. Root out the perversion, the control, the manipulation, the wickedness, the evil, all of that. Obadiah desired to do that. Elijah desired to do that. And Obadiah mentions Sepharad. I'm like, what? And so then there is also the idea, until Judah goes back to the land, Messiah's not coming. And
Yes.
and Judah needs the help of his brothers. And if you wanted
Yes.
to put it in worse Western terminology, doesn't every groom want the approval of his bride? And if
Yes.
she behaves as Paul said, will she not respect him and submit to him? And his responsibility, in Paul's terminology, is to love us. Isn't that amazing? This is what I see that he's doing. And those who can pioneer and authentically lead the way in building these bridges, wow. And it's happening. It's happening. Thank goodness for Gidon, who responded to this picking at his heart, to
Mm.
Bob Odell, to Thule Wise and Israel 365 and the team that he's put together. What a precious team. To Argo Farms, Jeremy and
And Ari.
Ari. Oh my gosh, to the voice of freedom, and that's Kalev Myers and the team that he's got globally, calling, bring the kidnapped home, bring the hostages home. All of these beautiful things that bring us together, that build bridges, that are accepting
Yes.
the other side. But we have to be willing to hear the other. We
We
have
do.
to be willing to wrestle through these struggles in the marriage of the minds, right? The meeting of
Right.
minds. And it's been so meaningful. I will never be the same because of their love and acceptance of me. Avi lived.
Yes.
He's one of them that was on Gidon's channels. I remember now. And Avi was the first to ever say, I was endeavoring to be so respectful and this and that and saying, well, as a Gentile, and Avi looked at me and he said, Revis, you're not a Gentile. You're no longer a Gentile. You believe with us. And I said, really? That's how you see me? I cried. And I don't remember who the other was that told me that. Oof, I'm even getting emotional
Mm.
now.
Mm.
It's almost like we put ourselves out for adoption to the other side, whatever, to the side we were supposed to carry the message through and endeavor to be ourselves, to swim upstream, to find our family again. And now that I'm finding such meaningful people, they're saying very kind things.
Yes.
Sharon Michaels of Israel 365. I met her through Gidon's event honoring the bridge builders in October 15 of 2023. And Sharon said to me just a month or two or three later, I had so much fun at that event. I would love to do something with you when Israel has her 76th birthday. Would you come alongside and work with me? It just needs your fingerprint on there because I could make people laugh, because I could do something meaningful and bring maybe a perspective of who Western Christians are, um, but trying to embrace and not be a threat and prove
Amen.
there is a trustworthiness in us. Give us a chance. I'm not saying everyone, but vet us one at a time and let's see where we go from here. Because not all of us have a group that yet has a scroll that is in Africa among our tribe saying, take us home, take us home. It's like, no, we're a part of the Roman Empire living in the West, having made our way through. And isn't it incredible that at this point we're like, no, I
Mm.
just want to go home. I
Yeah.
just go home. And if that's doing Zooms with people in Israel, okay. If it's sending money to say, we don't want a two-state solution, we want you to redeem the land and do what you're called to do. And even in that process, oh my goodness, they've had the patience of Job. That's what's such a blessing to me. They've not been harsh. They've not been cruel. They've been the one place to actually receive this nomadic homeless people that no one wants. And then when they did, who said it? One of the Hindus said, it's like sleeping next to a mad dog. You put your own life in danger. A Buddhist or
Yes.
a Hindu person had said it. And I was like, yeah, you cannot sleep next to a mad dog and expect to wake up alive. They're hungry. It's it's
Yes.
it's a part of their thought process. And we're not going to change it. But they've done such an incredible thing to provide a home to them, housing, but it didn't work.
Mm.
You fool me once, shame on you. You're not going to fool me again, or it's shame on me. And I
Yeah.
support Israel's choice to say, you're not going to put a shame on me. You're not going to fool me. I'm not going for that. I totally support it and I agree. And that's why I said I would go to the front lines with them. Yeah.
Amen. Well, I
Yeah.
think I know you and I are in the same mindset here,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
such a blessing to be
Yes.
connected with so many people from both sides of the family who have the same mindset.
And it's growing.
And it's
Our
growing.
family reunions are getting bigger and bigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not exclusively Christians or exclusively Orthodox Jew. There's at minimum one from the other side of the family will show up and go, hey, don't forget about us. And it's so fun.
Yes.
So fun and very meaningful. I don't think we can even begin to fathom what transpires through even one of those moments because we don't see the unseen as
Right.
readily as we see the seen. We could feel it, we could discern it, and some have a profound gift to see precisely. But I think we'll all be chuckling at a certain point and say, oh, who knew? Who
Yes.
knew? Isn't that awesome? And that's what faith is about, to trust the process. When we're not in control, but we get choices, when we don't see the unseen, but we trust what Father has told us. And he's proven over and again that he is true, that he is faithful, that he is consistent, he's loving, he's good. I want to be in his family.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, Revis, that sounds like a great place that we can stop
Yes.
for
Yes.
now. I mean, we're
Call
just
it complete.
well, yeah,
For now.
we're completing
Yeah.
this part of the conversation, but the
Yes.
conversation will continue.
Yes. Yes. And as I progress in my Ladino, I'll circle back and visit. So
Amen.
thank you so much for inviting me to dialogue with you. What a my heart is just so full. My heart is yeah, it's feeling very precious and special. I've been touched in a meaningful way through this. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Revis. It's
Yeah.
a blessing to hear your heart, to hear
Yeah.
your story, and I look
Yeah.
forward to meeting you in person sometime very soon.
Yes, I feel like we have. I feel like we have, but yeah, I look forward to it as well. All right. Bless you, my friend.
Bless you.